Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to really get into a fascinating stack of source material. It details this profound, almost existential conflict in the mountain kingdom of Lancre.
Mm.
And what we're really unpacking here is the ultimate clash. On one side, you have deep local tradition, the pragmatic, rock-hard wisdom of the witches.
Right.
And on the other, a highly adaptable, technologically aware, and thoroughly modern threat, the magpie family of vampires.
And this is such a rich deep dive because, this conflict isn't just your standard Gothic horror story.
No, not
It's
a
a brilliant study in these clashing philosophies. You've got this traditional, very practical wisdom fighting against a slick, almost self-help philosophy that's been applied directly to, to absolute evil.
Yeah.
Our sources cover the events right after the birth of the new queen's baby. So it's this moment of joy that, ironically, gives the magpies the perfect excuse to invade, all cloaked in this guise of, diplomacy.
And the entire framework for that invasion, the whole ethos of this modern vampire family, it's captured right there in the title concept, Carpe Jugulum.
Seize the throat.
Seize the throat. It sounds so swift, efficient, and frankly brutal.
Yeah.
But they wrap it all up in the language of progress.
Precisely. The magpies are not your great-grandfather's vampires. Captain Magpie sees his family as representing progress. They're moving beyond these, quaint, easily defeated monsters.
Right.
They don't deny what they are. He admits it. Are we fiendish killers? Well, yes, of course we are. But they insist on being efficient and rational fiendish killers.
It's like corporate evil.
It is. He sees the traditional residents of Lancre, the centaurs, the pixies, even the powerful witches, as evolutionary cul-de-sacs. Just dusty old relics that are unfitted for survival in this new, streamlined world order he wants to build. They swapped Gothic drama for corporate strategy.
Okay, so if that's the threat, we have to start by understanding the ground they plan to conquer. Let's unpack the kingdom of Lancre itself. To appreciate the defense, you need to know what kind of rock it's built on.
Well, Lancre is first and foremost just. It's defined by its physics-defying verticality. The sources describe it as such a vertical country that the only truly flat places you can reliably find are tables in the top of some people's heads.
So you have to climb to do anything. You have to work for every single view, every bit of usable land.
Exactly. And what does that constant struggle with gravity and geology do to the people who live there?
It makes them deeply, relentlessly pragmatic.
That's the word. The sources describe them as hard-headed and straightforward. They just don't have the luxury of navel-gazing. Their concerns are immediate.
Is it going to rain before the harvest?
Right. Is this roof going to hold up?
Yeah.
They spend zero time on these big philosophical debates like, why are we here? Because to them, the answer is just obvious. They're here to work and to survive.
What's fascinating here, and you mentioned this earlier, is that this hard-headedness, this rejection of, airy-fairy mystical stuff, is exactly why Lancre produces such potent magic users.
It's the core of their whole philosophy. It seems totally counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does.
But the source notes that only those with their feet on rock can build castles in the air. If you're going to manipulate reality, you have to have an absolutely uncompromising grip on what reality is first.
So for a Lancrastrian, magic is just a tool. It's a tool you apply with common sense or headology, not some big spiritual quest.
It has to get results, practical results.
And you can see this practicality even in the most mundane things.
Oh, absolutely. Take their postal system, the communication system. The wind in Lancre is always trying to bite you, right? These severe biting gales.
So letterbox is just
an invitation for a wind tunnel in your house.
Uh.
So they've wisely concluded that letters are just left under large stones, wedged firmly in flower pots, or slipped under the door.
No unnecessary tech, just applied local wisdom.
That's it.
And that kind of detail, avoiding a windy draft, that really defines the culture. Speaking of which, it's a community that runs on a feudal system, but their version is, well, it's wonderfully specific.
Yes. The Lancre version of the feudal system means that everyone feuded all the time and handed on the fight to their descendants. It's this continuous low-grade social conflict.
Grudges are preserved like fine wine.
Exactly. They're carefully looked after and passed down.
Yeah.
They keep things at a nice and hot social temperature. And they don't write anything down because, if you have something to say, you say it to their face.
I have to pause on that. It sounds completely exhausting, but are you saying this constant feuding, this insistence on direct confrontation, it actually serves a useful social purpose?
According to the sources, it does. It keeps the community dynamic and sharp. There's no chance for complacency to set in. If you know your neighbor's great-great-grandson still holds a grudge about a cow your ancestor might have stolen in 1640.
Right.
It's this organic, constant mechanism for conflict resolution. Even if the resolution takes centuries, it forces engagement.
Okay, so that sets the stage for the traditional community. Now let's talk about the leader who kind of opens the door to this modern threat, King Verence. He is desperately trying to drag Lancre into the modern world.
And often to disastrous effect. Virence's heart is in the right place, but his head is in Ankh-Morpork. He's trying to stop being the bellowing, carousing traditional king and become this diplomatic, tolerant clerk. He thinks his job is administration and inclusion.
And that's why he invites the magpies?
That's exactly why. He believes these little kingdoms have to worry about being part of a big world and dealing with all sorts of people. So he sends the invitation, assuming they're just, misunderstood diplomatic guests.
He seems obsessed with the appearance of modernity, too, that ridiculous crib he ordered.
The lace-heavy crib from Ankh-Morpork, yes. It perfectly sums up his priorities. He's focused on these ceremonial external details rather than the harsh realities of governance or, actual defense.
And his people just ignore him.
For the most part, yeah. His concerns are too abstract for their hard-headed, vertical lives.
And his attempt at a modern military defense, this is maybe the most ironic detail before the invasion. He's equipping this non-existent army with the Lancastrian army knife.
Ah, the army knife, designed by Sean Ogg. It's a work of philosophical genius and complete physical uselessness. The king is constantly suggesting improvements, all focused on intellectual conflict, not physical.
So it'd have tools for ontological arguments.
It includes the adjustable device for winning ontological arguments and the tool for extracting the essential truth from a given statement.
I mean, an ontological argument-winning tool sounds great in a debate club, but how is that supposed to stop a vampire? Does this just show how completely out of touch Verence is?
Absolutely. He is preparing for a diplomatic war, a battle of wits. He thinks victory is convincing the enemy that their foundational beliefs are false.
But the magpies don't care about intellectualism.
They reject it entirely. They favor applied, ruthlessly practical action. Verence's focus on a mental victory leaves Lancre wide open for a physical takeover. It's just a tragic misreading of the geopolitical landscape.
Okay, so this is where the magpies step in to exploit that vacuum. They arrive in the iconic black coach, which the source describes as seeming to be dragging the night behind it.
A very striking image, but their analysis of the situation is cold and clinical. They immediately scout Lancre. They call it the gateway to the world, an ideal staging point for them.
And their first assessment is that it's entirely undefended.
Which really brings home how effective Verence's lack of preparedness is. But the Count has to correct his son, Vlad. He points out that the country was possessed of some extremely effective defenses. The witches.
Until their invitation nullified that magical shield.
Exactly. So their strategy isn't brute force. It's psychological nullification and modernization.
They're anti-Gothic.
Totally. They reject all the traditional vampire tropes as just bad management. No coffins. They find them unnecessarily confining. No skulking in shadowy corners. They think flickering torches are so 15 centuries ago.
And the son, Vlad, even complains about the state of the local crypts being foul and drafty.
Their focus is on comfort, efficiency, and positive thinking.
They embrace self-help gurus. The Count is applying positive affirmation to his entire monstrous existence. He's even trying to get his family used to sunlight.
Yes. The ultimate goal is the beach. They take it one step at a time, exposing themselves to a little light each day. They're using motivational techniques to overcome their fundamental biological limitations.
They even try mixing slightly spoiled blood with expensive fizzy wine.
To make the process of feeding more palatable and modern, they're trying to optimize their monstrousness.
And they rationalize their whole existence through this modern management jargon. They insist that thinking of vampires only in terms of their diet is insulting.
They've completely reframed their predation. The Count sees them as a vital part of the great cycle of life.
Like ecological managers.
Exactly. They are the hunter, necessary to prevent the prey humanity from overgrazing. They don't see themselves as evil, but as this necessary, vital mechanism of natural balance. It is rationalized cruelty at its finest.
And they even implement a tax system they promise will be non-onerous. Literally no blood, figuratively speaking.
That irony is just brutal, isn't it? The non-onerous taxes are the non-blood taxes, like regular financial levies to run the country. The blood is just...
Well, that's part of the natural cycle. It's like paying for the ecosystem management they provide. It's a completely dehumanizing worldview.
But their true agenda goes beyond simple predation. It's about bureaucratic control and, frankly, social cleansing, wrapped in that same language of progress.
Their goal is to rule the country and clean up the races they deem inefficient or unfitted for survival. Vlad expresses this deep disdain for centaurs, dwarfs, and pixies, calling them out of place.
So this is modernization applied to genocide, and making it sound like efficient social management and evolutionary necessity. They aren't traditional overlords, they're corporate raiders, implementing a toxic restructuring.
That's why they replace the flickering torches with proper oil lamps and oil the squeaky hinges. The traditional monster was known and feared. The modern magpie is sleek, efficient, and horrifyingly rational.
They want silence and order, not a spooky atmosphere.
And that move from chaos and atmosphere to this sterile bureaucratic efficiency perfectly summarizes their evil. They're taking a resource, Lancre and its people, and reducing them to just things.
A resource to be managed, which is precisely the sin that Granny Weatherwax will later define.
Okay, let's leave the magpies optimizing their spreadsheets for a moment and turn to the people fighting back. The traditional defenders of Lancre.
The witches.
The core of Lancre's defense rests on its powerful trio of witches. And Granny Weatherwax is the central axis. Her power is rooted in this almost impossible level of iron self-control.
And the difficult choices she relentlessly makes. Granny's whole identity is defined by her standing right on the edge of power, the edge of morality, the edge of the wild.
She makes the choices no one else wants to.
So that everyone else, including the king, can even pretend to themselves that there were no decisions to be made. She shoulders the entire burden of judgment.
And our sources give us this really powerful, almost heartbreaking look at what that judgment entails, especially with her unofficial duties like euthanasia.
Yes,
Yeah.
the source details these unspoken acts of mercy. And it's not about pushing people out of the world, but about stopping the world from pulling them back when their body has become a true prison of pain.
She does it silently, without thanks.
Taking that moral calculation entirely on herself. Her core belief is that knowledge is gained from life, and specifically from choice.
And the choice is never easy.
Never. She believes you have to choose, knowing that the rightness or wrongness might never be clear, or even that you were deciding between two sorts of wrong, that there was no right anywhere.
And always, always you did it by yourself.
That is the definition of true, solitary moral responsibility. It's agonizing.
And this overwhelming burden, it leads to her profound internal struggle right before the confrontation with the magpies. She gets that invitation to the christening, which she'd been avoiding, and it triggers a crisis of conscience.
She realizes the reward for all that toil, all that lonely judgment is just more toil. She's stalked by these dark thoughts and this chilling self-doubt, the terror that she will go bad without noticing.
And this isn't just a generic fear of failure, is it? It's a specific hereditary fear.
Right, it references the Dark and the Weatherwaxes, her sister Lilith, her own Granny Allison, who went to the bad and headed for Uberwald, the traditional land of monsters.
So she's worried that her relentless control might actually be masking some inner decay, that she's closer to the monster she's fighting than the protector she needs to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's terrified. Her power is fundamentally corrupting. And she puts this fear to the ultimate test in the gnarly ground. And we have to really unpack this location because it's a physical representation of her internal crisis.
Okay, let's define the gnarly ground. What makes it responsive to emotion?
The gnarly ground is a place where space is metaphysically scrunched up. It's an area where reality responds to the subjective emotional state of the person traveling through it.
So it's not just a metaphor.
No, it's literal. If you feel fear, the world truly becomes more dangerous. When Nanny Ogg crossed a stream there once, she was happy and in love, and the stream was just easy stepping stones.
But for Granny, who is burdened by self-doubt and this terrifying prospect of her own dark potential, the reality of the ground warps dramatically.
The stream becomes a massive, terrifying gorge. This is her doubt made manifest, and she forces herself to face it. She could easily fly or use magic, but she chooses to blindfold herself and crawl across a narrow, treacherous stone bridge.
Why the blindfold? Why not just close her eyes?
It's a rigorous act of self-testing. She is refusing to allow her fear, her doubt, or the illusion of the gorge, which is only real because she fears it, to dictate the reality of the task.
So she's forcing her body to acknowledge only the literal truth of the path.
choosing duty and physical reality over the fearful illusion projected by her own troubled mind. That rigorous self-control is the source of her deepest magic.
Okay, so if Granny represents rigorous internal control, then Nanny Ogg is the external, applied common sense. She's the ultimate pragmatist, the mother figure.
Nanny Ogg is the joyous opposite. She's enthusiastic, particularly about free food. She loves the venison and the expensive fizzy wine the king provides. She's fiercely loyal, but her main strategy is direct action and headology. She is pure common sense.
And we see that common sense in action when she's confronted by the Omnian priest, Mightily Oates. He tries to get her to confess or repent her sins.
And she just shuts him down immediately. She refuses to repent. She states emphatically, "I ain't sorry for most of it." And her reason is wonderfully pragmatic. If she started repenting at her age, she'd never get any work done.
Repentance is an administrative burden she cannot afford.
Exactly. And her approach to conflict is just as direct. When action is required, she doesn't bother with complex spells. She mobilizes her resources.
Her family.
Her vast extended family. She creates a spontaneous mob of 79 Oggs. She understands that a dedicated, aggressive, and highly motivated crowd is sometimes more powerful than any magical barrier. And crucially, she's the one who gets the aid of the most volatile and effective allies, the Knockit McFeagle.
So Nanny is the engine of the defense, while Granny is the moral compass. But let's talk about the current maiden, Agnes Nitt, who seems paralyzed by self-doubt.
Agnes is constantly struggling. She's always feeling stupid and wishing she could just be anywhere but Lancre. But this psychological complexity is her great strength. She is in two minds about everything, which manifests as her powerful, separate internal personality, Perdita.
Perdita is fantastic. She's the exact opposite of Agnes. Dynamic, extroverted, highly critical. It's like having a very aggressive, well-dressed commentary track running through your brain at all times.
Perdita is ruthlessly practical. She views Agnes as the lot of chocolate, the soft, easily consumed version of herself. And she often points out these humiliating, mundane details like the tear your knickers. But this deep, constant internal conflict, this lack of a singular, settled personality, actually makes Agnes uniquely useful later on. Her mind is just too busy arguing with itself to be easily susceptible to the magpie's simple, hypnotic mind control.
That's a powerful insight. In a crisis of mental manipulation, being conflicted is a form of defense. Now, rounding out the trio, we have Magrat, the new queen, who is currently wrestling with the mother role after the birth of her baby.
Magrat is desperately trying to combine motherhood, a royal career, and witchcraft. And she feels that Granny and Nanny treat her career as queen as a hobby. She's trying to modernize the coven structure, too.
And the christening ceremony itself is a perfect snapshot of the chaos surrounding her new role, especially the naming of the baby.
It's pure Lancre mayhem. The child ends up being named Esmeralda Margaret. Note spelling of Lancre.
Or Spelly, for short.
Spelly, exactly. And this is thanks to Nanny Ogg, who manages to subtly influence the very nervous priest during the baptism. The priest is so overwhelmed by Nanny's artificial additives and her extreme interest that he just babbles out whatever Nanny suggested.
So even a royal ceremony in Lancre is subject to the immediate local influence of the Ogg clan.
Always. But despite Magrat's desire for royal respect, when the chips are down, her priorities snap right back to instinctual defense.
The mother instinct?
It takes over completely. When she hears Granny is in trouble, Magrat immediately just bundled up her little baby, and she didn't even stop to worry about her husband. Royal duties, political correctness, the safety of the king, all secondary to the safety of her child and her coven leader. It is the ultimate demonstration of the mother's role in action.
This brings us right to the dynamic itself. Maiden, mother, crone. Given that Magrat is juggling career and motherhood, how does her new role challenge the traditional and often difficult roles of the crone and maiden?
It creates a crisis in the coven structure. The source explicitly discusses this three-witch dynamic, which Nanny Ogg calls a bit of superstition, but clearly lives by. And the source suggests Granny left the coven, in part because she saw a new three here, forming with Magrat and Agnes.
She didn't want to be forced into the role of the crone.
Exactly.
But why would Granny resist the crone role? That's traditionally the wisest, most powerful phase.
It's the solitary role. Granny embraces solitude, but she resists being defined by it prematurely. And Nanny herself fears the crone title because she thinks she is too cheerful for it, implying the crone must embody a certain gloomy solitude and finality.
So the structure needs a maiden.
Perdita, constantly divided and figuring herself out.
A mother.
Magrat, focused on practical nurturing and defense.
Her crone.
The solitary judger. And Granny resists being boxed in. She forces the structure to evolve and adapt, just as Lancre itself must adapt to the Magpigries.
This three-part structure is a constant undercurrent, but when traditional defenses fail against modern evil, the witches have to rely on a truly odd collection of outsiders to help them.
The Magpies arrived, assuming Lancre was weak, but what they failed to account for were the strange, deep connections the witches had built through decades of pragmatic service. The first and most conflicted ally is the priest, Mightily Oates.
The quite reverend mightily praiseworthy are ye who exalteth Oates. Before we dive into his internal struggle, we have to talk about his religion, Omnianism.
Right. Omnianism is based on the great god Om, whose primary symbol is a turtle. And this is crucial because it speaks to the necessary absurdity and the occasional practical limitations that all theological systems face. Oates himself is kind, timid, and utterly conflicted internally.
He has two constant internal voices.
The good Oates, who represents strict theological adherence, and the bad Oates, who questions the literal truth of the Book of Om and constantly challenges the doctrine.
So he's having a theological debate in his head 24/7, and this, amazingly, turns out to be his defense mechanism against the vampires.
It's his superpower. The Magpies tried to project these simple, irresistible suggestions. You should leave. This is not your fight. But Oates' mind is perpetually in two minds about everything. His internal complexity creates a kind of psychic static.
And his amulet.
Combine that with his Omnian amulet, a simple turtle pendant, which, because he believes it works, reinforces his mental independence, and the vampires just cannot touch him.
It's a powerful point about belief and self-awareness. But his internal debate has made morality incredibly complex for him. His religion has, 160 opinions since the last schism?
And Granny, who deals only in hard practicality, forces him to confront the black and white nature of true evil. She delivers this massive philosophical counterpoint to his intellectualism. There's no grays, she says, only white that's got grubby.
She just sweeps away centuries of theological nuance with a single, brutal metaphor.
And then she gives him the key definition of sin that simplifies the entire magpie operation. She tells him, sin, young man, is when you treat people as things, including yourself. That's what sin is.
This is a revolutionary insight for Oates. It cuts straight through all the complex debates about dietary restrictions and investment choices. It defines the Magpies' modernized corporate evil perfectly.
Their efficiency, their restructuring, their non-onerous taxes, it all boils down to objectification. They treat centaurs, pixies, and humans as things to be managed or preyed upon.
Okay, so if that's the intellectual ally, our most colorful and volatile allies are the 6-inch red-haired gnomes, the Nakmak Feegle.
The pixies.
The pixies.
They are magnificent chaos. They're blue from heavy tattooing and paint, and they were driven out by the Magpies' cleanup operation.
Yeah.
They are fiercely loyal to the witches and live for the simple pleasures of drinking, fighting, and stealing cows.
And their language is almost unintelligible.
Yeah, it's described as having a hint of heather and midden.
And they prove instrumental in freeing King Varence, who is still under the vampire's subtle, mind-controlling influence.
The Feegle understand practical magic better than anyone. They recognize that the Magpies have placed an influence, a shadow essence, on Varence. So, led by the Kelda's man, Big Aggie's man, they use a full-size crossbow and white fire dropped onto a forge to shoot the king's shadow.
They pin his shadow to the wall.
Literally. They use physical force to target an insubstantial psychic manipulation until the essence fades.
I love the practicality of that. It's not a complicated spell. It's just a crossbow and extreme prejudice aimed at the source of the subtle influence. But the Feegle, being pragmatists, don't do this just out of loyalty, do they?
Not without compensation. They immediately demonstrate surprising political savvy. They demand and get Varence to sign over a rent-free island in exchange for their help.
And Nanny Ogg sums it up perfectly.
Dress that up in fancy talk and you've got politics. The little blue fighters are immediately restructuring the kingdom's property laws.
Meanwhile, we find a crucial ally inside the Magpie castle. A disgruntled traditionalist who hates the Magpies for their lack of Gothic charm, Igor.
Igor is the perfect Gothic servant. He's covered in scars and stitches, he limps on purpose, loves the smell of spider webs, and drinks brandy like Think. He is disgusted by the Magpies' managerial approach to evil.
His complaints are amazing. He's obsessed with the loss of atmosphere.
He hates the modernization. He despises how they've oiled the hingeth, removing the classic spooky castle squeaks that took bloody earth to get right. He complains about them replacing flickering torches with proper oil lamp,
He thinks they're a disgrace to the species.
for abandoning the proper aesthetic of monstrousness. He leaves because his employers are not sufficiently dramatic or traditional.
And he joins Nanny Og, which seems like an unlikely pairing, but it's based on a very particular kind of respect.
Igor becomes Nanny's crucial ally because he's a good judge of character. He likes a clear, firm, authoritative voice, which Nanny provides in spades. The magpies treat him like a sensitive modern employee, using phrases like, "Would you mind?"
And Nanny just tells him what needs doing.
Right. And Igor respects that lack of modern management fuss. He provides the insider information and the navigational skills they need for the final assault.
The final piece of the philosophical puzzle before the climax is this discussion about the phoenix, which the magpies had wounded and dismissed.
Yes, they wounded a young phoenix, calling it unfitted for survival. A perfect example of their cold, efficiency-focused ruthlessness. And the debate about its existence involves three viewpoints: the practical man, the falconer, the theologian Oates, and the witch, Granny.
Hodgsar, the falconer, has the physical evidence. He has the phoenix eggshells. But Oates, still struggling with his theology, dismisses the phoenix as a mythical creature or an allegory.
Which is strange, right? For a man of faith to reject a creature that embodies resurrection.
Why is he so hesitant?
Because for Oates, the miracle has to fit the sacred text. Anything outside the text must be an allegory. For him, physical reality has to bow to the theological explanation.
But Granny forces the conversation back to hard reality.
She insists you can't have just one of anything. The phoenix must be bird first, myth second.
And she suggests the creature's existence is tied to its environment and perception. It was born among hawks, so it looks like a hawk. If it was hatched in a hen roost, it'd be a chicken.
That is the core insight. A phoenix is what it may become. It's a symbol that requires physical reality to be effective. The magpies tried to kill the concept of rebirth and adaptation by killing the bird, but Granny recognizes that myth only works if it's grounded in something real, adaptable, and practical. And this conversation sets the final stage. A battle not over magic, but over reality and self-definition.
Okay, the final strategy is just beautiful because the Count believed he had already won. He thought he'd defeated Granny by exposing her to her own dark side, her sister Lilith, her Granny Allison, and making her doubt herself during that trial in the Norley ground.
The Count's psychological strategy was masterful. He targeted the absolute core of her being, the crushing burden of choosing between two kinds of wrong. He thought that by showing her the long, rich, deep shadow of her own immense power, she would crack.
He thought she'd accept the darkness and submit to him.
Or even join him. He thought his progressive psychology would trump her old-world magic.
But Granny's secret strategy, this ultimate act of borrowing, was a brilliant piece of magical jujitsu. She leveraged the Count's own modern arrogance right back against him.
Yeah, this needs careful unpacking. Traditional borrowing involves entering the mind of an animal, but Granny took it so much further. The crucial revelation is that she didn't try to protect herself by leaving her essence somewhere safe. She allowed the magpies to invite her in by engaging her in that psychological struggle.
So the Count, who prided himself on listening to his own blood, his instincts, his inherent nature, he opened the door to his inner self.
And Granny walked right through it. She didn't possess him. She became the essence of his self-control. And, crucially, his moral framework. She was riding his own blood like a subway line.
And the ultimate reveal is her triumphant declaration. I'm in every muscle in your body, and I'm in your head. Oh yes, I was in the blood, Count, in the blood.
Yeah, I've been vampired. You've been weather-waxed, all of you.
She didn't use a stake. She performed an internal takeover, turning his progressive belief in his own instincts into his ultimate vulnerability. She defined his moral limits from within.
And while Granny is performing this incredible feat of internal espionage, the physical assault on the castle happens thanks to Nanny Og, the spontaneous mob, and the genius of Sean Og.
The frontal assault by the Og-led mob, all 79 of them, failed immediately. The mercenaries were well-equipped, they had good fields of fire, so they needed a back-all attack.
And Sean Og delivers one of the most memorable tactical moves in the source material.
He targets the Gong Tower, the castle's privy pit, the largest, most strategically vulnerable part of the entire castle structure. Because the castle was busier than usual.
The contents of the Gong Tower had significantly piled up. Sean, the designer of the philosophical army knife, suddenly becomes ruthlessly practical. He uses a flaming arrow to ignite the accumulated organic contents of the pit.
And the accumulated contents, rich in methane and other gases, explode spectacularly. It blows the main doors right off the keep.
The sophisticated, modernized vampires defeated by concentrated medieval waste gases. Pragmatism always wins in Lancre.
And Sean then follows up by defeating Corporal Svitz using the Lancastrian peacetime army knife.
But he doesn't use its philosophical functions. He uses the specific tool he built in, the instrument for ending arguments, very quickly. It turns out a tool designed for intellectual victory can be used for a swift, aggressive, and decidedly physical conclusion when you wield it with intent.
As the chaos unfolds, the core witches Nanny, Magrat, and Agnes find Granny waiting in the vaults, where she has been holding the Count in this psychic battle. She's stirring mud in water, not tea, and seems physically drunk from the sheer mental exertion.
And the confrontation is messy and dynamic. This is where Agnes's unique physical talent, stemming from her constant internal conflict, comes into play. Her sonic scream, which she can focus and project at a range that melts earwax at the top of the scale, incapacitates Vlad, the son. It just destroys his hearing and mental focus.
But the true climax comes when the Count, realizing he's losing the internal fight, attempts to use the ultimate hostage, the baby, Esmeralda.
He thinks this is his final trump card. He believes he has broken Granny and that her own self-doubt will paralyze her. But Granny reveals her ultimate final defense. It's the definition of the mother's selfless ethical duty. She has placed the essence of herself, her fundamental moral compass, her duty, her choice to be good into the baby.
She tells the Count, who is still weather-waxed internally, "You can't see. I wouldn't harm the child, so you can't."
The Count's own mind, taken over by Granny's rigorous self-control, prevents him from moving. And when his daughter Lacrimosa tries to attack the baby, she's physically repelled. She complains, "I nearly broke my arm."
Granny's self-definition has become a psychic force field around the next generation.
The Count's arrogance, his belief that he could control Granny's mind, resulted in him internalizing his own defeat.
So with the Count mentally neutralized, Granny offers him a final choice: justice or mercy. This is the last great philosophical debate of the piece.
And she defines justice as being burned to ashes and scattered, which, according to the sources, usually allows a vampire to eventually return, maybe even stronger. But mercy is a quick, clean decapitation with the promise that he'll return in 50 years, perhaps with enough sense to be stupid.
She forces him to choose the traditional temporary defeat over the riskier modern eradication.
And this choice highlights the contrast between the modern magpie and the traditional monster. We get a glimpse of the old master Count Magpie, whom Igor secretly disguised but respected because he was a gentleman who didn't expect us to like him, and used his reputation for marvelous publicity. The old monster was honest, the new one is deceitful.
And here we reach the final necessary act. The one who has to deliver the judgment is mightily Oates.
The priest who has spent the entire narrative struggling with moral ambiguities, the 160 varying opinions on sin, is asked to choose the action.
He had been struggling to find Ohm in an obvious and unequivocal way, unable to decide between the good Oates and the bad Oates. But Granny forces him into a definitive black-and-white choice against absolute, objectifying evil.
And Oates, having gained knowledge through necessity and action, doesn't use a crucifix or holy water. He uses the Forge's axe. And it leaves a gold trail in the air, a sign of holy judgment made in the physical world. And he decapitates the Count.
This demonstrates that faith only becomes potent when it is grounded in necessary practical action and decisive moral clarity. He moved from intellectual paralysis to absolute conviction.
And Granny's final, damning assessment of the modern magpie just summarizes her definition of sin. She tells him he could have worked for himself, but what you really drink is power over people. He failed because he focused on turning people into things.
So what's the immediate aftermath?
King Verence, having been purified of the vampire influence when his shadow was shot, finally returns to the castle, ready to save the day.
Which is, of course, already over.
Right. He's a bit deflated, but he is impressed by the sudden and unexpected aggressiveness shown by Jason Ogg during the brief fight. The Nakmek Feegle are satisfied with their contractually obligated rent-free island.
And Granny Weatherwax,
having successfully stared down her own dark side and integrated her moral purpose, returns home and performs a ritual of renewal. She lights every single candle, and the source reveals this powerful sign of her renewed energy and resolved state. The water in her cottage is reversing gravity. It's soaring upward and plopping onto the damp ceiling. She has mastered reality once more.
And the priest, Mightily Oates, having found clarity and conviction through action rather than blind theological faith, chooses to head to the much more dangerous region of Uberwald to continue his mission.
Carrying a new holy amulet, an iron turtle made by Sean Ogg and a poultice for Magnus, he's embraced a new, harder, more practical mission.
This deep dive into Lancre reveals such a vital truth. This sophisticated bureaucratic evil, the kind that rationalizes its malice through self-help jargon and progressive management strategies, treating people as mere things, it's ultimately defeated not by outdated symbols or simple physical force.
No, it's defeated by absolute, relentless practicality, like Nanny Ogg, by deep moral choice, which is Granny, and by common sense applied fiercely when intellectual debate fails.
Granny's victory was rooted entirely in radical self-knowledge. She knew her darkness, her potential for corruption, but she consciously chose duty, and that made her self-knowledge an impenetrable defense against mental manipulation. It really highlights the vital role of self-awareness and critical thinking in navigating a world full of information overload and constant attempts at psychological control.
And that profound internal learning leads us to our final thought. Our source mentions that King Virence's wife finally understood all of Nanny Ogg's jokes, except for the one about the priest, the old woman, and the rhinoceros. Nanny then confessed she didn't understand that one until I was 40.
That raises a fascinating question for you, the learner, that builds on the necessity of practical knowledge. What piece of essential knowledge or moral insight are you currently operating without that you will only truly understand years later, after the necessary life experience has occurred? And how can you ensure you are making the right choices today with the imperfect information you currently possess?